Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Marketing Cloud Consultant Bootcamp, Day 5. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I am Jyotsna Bitra. I go by the name JB, and I co-lead the Salesforce Marketers Group Phoenix. And I have Brian with us today to talk about the integration topic of this exam. And Jenna, she's going to help us with the Q&A. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This session is being recorded, and the presentation will be, the video recording and the presentation will be shared after the session. Please follow the YouTube channel for the recording. If you have any questions during the presentation, please post them in the chat window and we will address them at the end of the presentation. And if you have any unanswered questions, post them in the Slack channel after the presentation. And also be sure to watch out for the resources channel where we share all the presentations and additional resources in there. And we are so far in the Marketing Cloud Consultant Bootcamp, we have finished 4 sessions, and today we are going to focus on the integration aspect. And the next session will be on data modeling and management by Vlad. And on the last session is dedicated for the questions that you may have. Any questions that you have that are related to the consultant certification and any of the topics that we have discussed so far in these sessions. We have a panel of speakers who are going to answer all the questions. So for that, we request you to fill out a form. I'll be sharing the link to the form in the chat window in a few minutes. So I request you to fill out this form with your questions. So we'll have some time to sort them out. And we have an announcement about the swag. We have a couple of Salesforce certification vouchers to give away. The participation is a must for all the sessions. On the day 7, we will be sharing a form where you can fill out with your details. And on the day 8, we will be doing a raffle or some sort of thing to choose the winners. So be sure to use your first name and the last name when you're joining the call. And as per the exam outline, integration takes up to 20% of the exam. And these are the different topics that are covered in there. I'll let Brian cover all these topics. Now, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. And let's see, I'm going to share screen number 2. How we all doing? It was great to get a chance to meet everybody earlier that I was able to meet on the line. So we will jump into our little session here. And give me just a second to get my ducks in a row here. Okay, so welcome to Marketing Cloud Connect Consultant and Integrations. And as you're going to see, and what you already have seen, is that integrations is a big part. It's a big slice of the pie. So this is definitely a topic that you want to be comfortable with on the certification exam. And I've been trying to find out the best way to kind of maximize our time together today. The topics we're going to cover are going to include things like Marketing Cloud Connect, and I teach a 4-day class on that. So it's taking some of that information and then distilling it down into the best key points today. So I'm going to try to make sure, I like to use the analogy, or the analogy I'm going to use here is picture going to your favorite theme park. We're going to be hovering over the theme park and we're going to ride some of your favorite rides. We're just not going to ride them that long. So if we take that kind of an approach, we'll be able to cover a lot of different aspects and places. And I do want to point out what I think are some of the key things that you would need to know. Again, things that you need to know for the certification exam are going to be things that you need to know for the product in general. So I think all that information will be helpful. I'm also going to provide a little bit of my test taking thoughts and strategies. I'm not going to spend much time on that, but I figure I've taken a lot of these exams like you all have, and I'll give you my 2 cents on what's helpful there. But we're going to spend most of our time today in demonstrations of the product and looking at the product. So this is my name, and that's my Twitter handle. I'm not terribly creative with my Twitter handle, so it's B__Richardson. That's the best that I could do. And I am an instructor for Trailhead Academy. And so I do teach courses around Marketing Cloud. I also teach the ad administrator class in the world of of CRM. So I teach that class as well. As a matter of fact, I'm teaching I was mentioning earlier to some folks, I'm teaching a Cert Day webinar tomorrow on that particular topic. I do hold certifications, which include email specialist. My newest one is I got the Pardot email specialist in January, very end of January. I also have Marketing Cloud admin and I have Marketing Cloud consultant, hence teaching this particular class. Over on the Salesforce side, I do hold my admin and advanced admin certifications. But one of the things that you probably didn't hear me list there is anything in the world of developer. And that's because I'm not a developer. So everything that I do is declarative. I do know what development tools can do for us. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to take all these topics and integrate them into this presentation. Yes, that was my first bad dad joke you're going to hear, and you're probably going to hear some more. There's two things I'm known for. It's dad jokes and rapping. Neither one of them are good, but you're going to see both during our short time together today. So you will see the Marketing Cloud Connect rap. So I'd like to tell you it's going to be wonderful, but I don't want to lie either. So we'll keep going. So these are the three parts that integration covers. So we have we want to talk about the integration exam itself and what the percentages are. Make sure we're spending time on the key things. We're going to make sure we talk about the concepts. So the middle point is really where we're going to spend most of the class. But then the third aspect that I want to add and kind of add to the end, and again, if you're going to have a Slack channel for resources, this presentation will have like links to get to these places. But I want to make sure that you have really good resources to go to find information. You may know all of them. Maybe you know some of them. Maybe you don't know very many of them. So I'm going to share them with you as well, because if you really want to get in a deep dive into integrations, there's a lot of good stuff out there. Some of it's just kind of knowing where to go. So as we look at the different parts of the certification exam, this is kind of breaking it down, and you'll see that the biggest part is going to be data modeling and management, but the next biggest thing we have here is integration at 20%. So this is a big part, it's a big chunk of the certification exam, and I'm just going to jump over to the study guide super quick, because I'm sure you guys have spent some time going through this guide, but it is so helpful. And when you go through the guide, a few quick things. Obviously, if you come down here, you're going to see the breakdown. But anytime you open up these little carrots here, all this information is here for a reason. So if you see something listed, it's here for a reason. If you see something in parentheses, when you're looking at these guides, it's here for a reason. These are really key points that you need to know. And I always, you want to major in the majors and not in the minors, and integration is certainly going to be one of those big parts that we want to know. And the only quick test taking tips I'm going to give you is, and I think that this was mentioned earlier by someone else, but a lot of the questions are very scenario based. In this particular exam, you've got 60 questions and you've got 105 minutes. So the thing I always ask people really quickly, I wasn't a math major, but do you have 2 minutes per question? And the answer is that you don't. And so when you're trying to answer questions and leave some time to kind of go back to the questions that you wanted to go back and look at, it's tough. So you really need to be disciplined with your time. You need to quickly come up with answers. And questions you don't know, you don't have 5 minutes to spend on a question you don't know. So if you haven't been able to figure it out after 1 or 2 minutes, you really need to push on, because you may be missing some lower hanging fruit when you go to do that. The other thing I always tell people, make sure you eliminate the bad answers. Again, I know that's common sense, but it's just a really good test taking strategy if you know something's not true. And then just know yourself. Know yourself when it comes to studying, what types of studying helps you the best, and know yourself in test taking. Like for, some people I know, they say if I don't, go with my gut, then I always regret it later. I'm the exact opposite. I'm a person who definitely wants to go back and have that time. And I feel like I make points at the end by going back and kind of looking at things. So just know yourself as you're going to look at it. But those are just a quick couple of things that I will offer in the way of test taking. So as we are spending some time together today on the concepts that are covered on integration, you're going to see 3 here, but I'm going to spend a disproportionate amount of time with the first one. And the reason why I'm going to do that is I think that's the one that's probably maybe a little more difficult to go out there and learn on your own as opposed to some of the other things. And I'm going to give you some information on all three of these things to help out. But understanding Marketing Cloud Connect. So I'm going to spend a lot of time here talking about the connector itself, talking about some of the settings that we have to put together on both clouds in order to make things happen, talk about some of the key terms that we need to know between the two different models. Again, have a little bit of fun with it. Then the next thing we're going to do is making sure we talk about how our data model can support personalization and relevant messaging. So one of the key topics I want to talk about here is going to be the difference between contact data and journey data. So we're going to go through and talk about how that plays into things. And then we're also going to talk about extension products. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on extension products, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time for a couple of reasons. And number one, there's a lot of really good information, I think, on Trails and Trailhead to kind of supplement maybe if you're not familiar with some of these different extension products that are available. And then number two, I mean, I think Vlad did a really good job of covering some of these extension products that you saw in the admin bootcamp. I was able to take a look at that that particular video that he put together. And then kind of an extra, number three, some of the Trailhead Live segments I can show you a little bit later can show you at least some of those different items that you may want to have interest in. So like I said, I'm going to spend most of our time here today on Marketing Cloud Connect. So first thing with Marketing Cloud Connect is to make sure you go in and study the documentation. And I know that doesn't sound very exciting, at least it never does to me. But when you go to look at the documentation for Marketing Cloud Connect, there's a really, really good laid out information. I know the person that put this together, and this person really, really knows this connector. Like this was his baby for a number of years. And if you go through and look, understanding the difference when it comes to Marketing Cloud releases, all the different steps that you have to go through to connect, making sure you have all the prerequisites in place, understanding the settings and how you're going to put them together. When it comes to things like email sends and making sure that you know how to set up a trigger, for a trigger to be put in place. And we're going to talk and show you some of those things when it comes to triggers today. But there's also frequently asked questions, troubleshooting guide, tutorial. So in that information it's just a wealth of knowledge to be able to put together. Again, I'm gonna, in the resources, I'll also try to show you a couple of Trailhead Live segments that I think will talk about some of these things a little bit later. For me, it's always a balance where I want to see a little bit of a demonstration and then the documentation makes more sense. For me to just go and read documentation, the analogy I use is it's like grabbing a handful of sand for me and it just starts running through my fingers. But if you can, watch a presentation on it, see some of the basics, and then put those two things together, now it kind of makes the sand a little stickier and you can hold a little bit more of the information. But really, really great stuff there. If you're good at reading documentation, if that's you're a reader, a learner, then that's a great place to start. It's a great place to start for everybody, but it's certainly a place to get into. So we're going to jump into a Marketing Cloud Connect demonstration, and we're going to be in this demonstration mode for quite a long time. I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but maybe it was mentioned already. But please, if you have any questions, be sending those over through chat, and then they're going to be answering those questions as much as possible. And then if we have time at the end, we'll do some questions. I'm sure we'll have time for some Q&A towards the end of our time together today. But let's jump into Marketing Cloud Connect and start talking about some of the things that we are going to see. But before we actually jump into, I do want to show one more thing here. I do want to talk a little bit about users. So when you're using Marketing Cloud Connect, there's going to be a number of different users that are going to be important for us to keep in mind. And I'm going to get my little drawing tools here. So again, not an excellent art student, but we're here anyway. So when you look at Marketing Cloud, we need to have a user there that's got admin access. And we also, you can kind of ignore that second one. We need to have somebody on the Sales and Service Cloud side that has admin access as well. By the way, sometimes I slip into calling Salesforce CRM Salesforce and just calling Salesforce Marketing Cloud. It's just to shorten the amount of words that I'm saying, but we're all obviously Salesforce in one happy family. But you'll notice here that the visual I have here is a wrench. And so the reason there's a wrench is we need to have admin users because they're going to need to be able to make the tweaks and changes to the settings on either sides that we need to make this connection happen. So that's why those two are listed. But the other two users that are really important to us is over on the Marketing Cloud side, we have something here called the API user. And so your API user in Marketing Cloud, and then with your Salesforce system user over in Salesforce, these are the two users that this connection is going to ride on. So this is why you see this little plug here in the middle is these are two users in the system, but really these two users should be dedicated users that are just in charge of this connection that's going between. So when you look at the MCC API user in Marketing Cloud, that's able to take our tracking data, and now we can kind of share that information over into the world of Salesforce CRM and see our tracking data there. And then our system user allows us to have access to all of our wonderful data that we've been storing in Salesforce CRM, which is why we're probably doing Marketing Cloud Connect in the first place. We have all our information in this wonderful CRM system, but now we want to act upon it with a world-class email system. And this is where we get 1 + 1 = 3. And then the last thing down here is as a general rule of thumb, if you want to use Marketing Cloud Connect and get the most out of it, we would recommend that you have a user in a license that you're going to be using in both places. So if I had 10 salespeople who are using Marketing Cloud Connect, we would want to use 10 licenses in Marketing Cloud with 10 licenses in Sales and Service Cloud. So that's how we're going to get maximum functionality. There are some ways of not doing that, but you will lose some certain things. So in this time, I wanted to make sure we're talking about best practices, and our best practices are that you would want to have a one-to-one look at that. So you're basically kind of aligning these different users together, one of your users in Salesforce with one of your users in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And hopefully this is all kind of making sense, but these are just kind of some of the basics that we need to know about. Okay. All right, so let me get my drawing tools out of here, and we will get back into seeing some of the things that we need to have. So when you go to install Marketing Cloud Connect, what you're going to first start doing is you're going to search for that documentation. And if you do a search for Marketing Cloud Connect, which I've done a few times on this computer, one of the first things you're going to see is a link to documentation. And one of the second things you're going to see is there's actually a trail for Marketing Cloud Connect, which is really super helpful. But this kind of goes back to what I just did a little screenshot of on my screen, where you can see the different breakdowns of things like the latest Marketing Cloud releases. So this is one thing to know with Marketing Cloud Connect. And so I'd recommend you take notes as you go. This is something I would write down. I'll try to kind of call those things out. But Marketing Cloud Connect will update you to the second most recent release. So I'm going to use round numbers here. Let's say we were on release 10. We're not, but let's say we were on release 10. That was the most current version. You would be bumped up to release 9. So you're going to be one before what the current one is. And if you do want to be on the most current release, you do have to go in and manually install that if you want to add this. And so this is kind of showing us the latest releases that are available. And if you want to install Marketing Cloud Connect, you will go to the steps to install this managed package. And once you click on to install this managed package, you'll see production org, or you're going to see sandbox org. Let me kind of blow up my screen a little bit here. But we would want to, this is an actual production account that I'm in. So I would click on production org. I'm not actually going to install the managed package. I'm just kind of briefly showing you where that is. And hopefully some of you who are friends of the 80s will appreciate my Wang Sheng labeled org here. So when you go to upgrade to Marketing Cloud Connect, the managed package, you can decide to install it for admins only or for all users, or you can do it for specific profiles. And if you do it for specific profiles, you can determine which ones that you want to give access to. You'll have the choice of no access or full access. And once you've decided everything you want to do, you can click on upgrade. And as you install this managed package, it's going to be placing lots of different objects for you in your Salesforce org. It's going to be adding different fields that you can see and use. And we're going to take a look at some of these things as we look over into our setup menu here. So if you go into the back end of Salesforce, and you'll notice that we're in Classic. This is another thing to note. So Marketing Cloud Connect runs on Classic. So it has not been enabled for Lightning. It doesn't mean that if you're using Lightning, you can't use Marketing Cloud Connect. You can, but whenever you go into these Marketing Cloud tabs, it will click you into, or it'll hook you into Classic for those particular functions that you're going to see. So as we're looking here in our org, one of the first things I want to do is I want to talk about those some of our users. So I'm going to click on users, and let's just click on my name here, and I'm going to click on edit. So a couple of important things to note is when you install the Marketing Cloud Connect package, you're going to get these two fields that are available, but you do need to drag them to your user page layout. And really, when you check on one of these check boxes, you only need one of these check boxes. You don't need both. They essentially are giving you permission sets. And since permission sets in Salesforce are additive, then there's no harm for us giving us these two. But again, normally you would give admins the admin checkbox. You would give the AppExchange user permission set to your non-admin users. A little quick thing to note, if we're going to talk about scope by user here in a second, but if you're doing scope by user and you give somebody this admin permission, you will override that scope by user setting. So that's an important thing to note. Only give that one to folks who are admins. But again, essentially, if you check one of these boxes and you go into your permission sets, you'll see that you've been this permission set's been applied to you, and it gives you different connections. Other things that we have to do here on the back end is you have to create another permission set to have access to the connected app. So these are all things that you need to do. You need to make sure you've drugged these two fields here to your user page layout. You make sure that the users who are using Marketing Cloud Connect have one of these or the other. You need to make sure you create that connected app permission set so people can have access to the connected app. And again, these are all listed in those instructions in that documentation, but just kind of hitting on a few things. The other thing that you want to make sure that you do is with field level security, the email opt-out field on your on your contact or lead object, depending on what you're sending from, any user who's using Marketing Cloud Connect, that field has to at least be visible. So with field level security, that field has to be visible as part of this. So you're also going to, again, when it comes to page layouts, we'll see some other things that we've added as we go. But again, just kind of doing a quick run through of some of the key things that are happening as Marketing Cloud Connect comes through. And these are all important things to keep in mind. So let me now jump on over to Marketing Cloud. So after we've set up things over here in the world of our Salesforce CRM, we've installed this package. Let's kind of look at some of the things that we would install on the Marketing Cloud side. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back over here and we're going to look at how we would configure some of our settings for what we're going to use for Marketing Cloud Connect. So if we jump back over into Marketing Cloud, and I'm going to go ahead and, well, I'll leave that up for a second in case I need to go back in and look at it. But when we jump over into Marketing Cloud, one of the things I want to do is I'm going to go into the setup into Marketing Cloud. So in the upper right-hand corner, I'm going to be clicking on the setup menu. So again, more and more over time, you're starting to see us try to align and make some similarities between the two systems. So we're in the admin section of Salesforce CRM. You see the setup menu. We're also seeing the setup menu here in Marketing Cloud. And let's jump in. Let's take a look. So if we look over in the platform tools section, and we go into expand that out, we're going to see apps. And when you go into apps, one of the ones that you're going to see here is the Salesforce integration. And as we look at the Salesforce integration, I'm going to go ahead and click on edit. Now this is an org that's already been connected, but I'm going to try to hit some other key points here. First thing I'm going to point out here is something called scope by user. So I want to explain and make sure you're comfortable with that term. That's definitely a term you need to know about Marketing Cloud Connect. So it's easier to explain, I think, scope by user. And if you understand what scope by user is, and then you'll know what it isn't. And what it isn't is what non-scope by user is. So let's try to make sure this makes sense. So scope by user, and I think this is easier to explain with a quick little example. So I'm going to use some text here. So scope by user, and you can kind of write this definition down if you want. If you choose scope by user, it's going to honor the Salesforce permission model when you're sending to reports or campaigns. If you've got scope by user checked, it's going to honor the Salesforce permission model when you're sending an email to reports or campaigns. A lot of times when we think of reports, we're thinking of seeing performance, right? We're trying to see metrics. We can use reports in two ways with Marketing Cloud Connect. One way we can use it is to create an audience of folks we want to send to. So it's just a tabular report we would send to. We can also, we're going to see a little bit later on, you can also use reports for showing, tracking information or building, beautiful dashboards in Salesforce as well. But we're talking about sending the reports right now. And if I go with, let's say it's scope by user, and we have non-scope by user. Actually, let's go back up here. And then we have non-scope by user here. Yeah, we'll just do that. And let's say that for me, when it comes to contacts, I can see 100. I have access to 100 contacts, but the company has 1,000. If we're doing scope by user and I send an email, I can only send to the 100 contacts that I have access to. If you do non-scope by user, what it says is that I can now send an email to whoever your tracking user in Salesforce has access to. Now, you don't have to do this, and there's going to be reasons why you wouldn't want to do this, but our recommendation is that you make your tracking user in Salesforce. Oh my gosh, I called it the tracking user. I went back a few days, so sorry. The system user is what we call that user in Salesforce now that carries the connection. At one time, we used to call it the tracking user. I haven't said that in a while. Sorry about that.
A few years ago, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going back a few. Sorry. The system user is what we want to talk about. System user and tracking user are synonymous, but really system user is what we're talking about these days. But the system user, we recommend to have you all modify all access. So let's say I'm sending to a report and I've got non-scope by user, which would be this not checked. Now that means I can send an email to all 1,000 contacts. So that's what scope and non-scope by user means. Scope by user, we're honoring the Salesforce permission model when it comes to sending reports or campaigns. Non-scope by user gives me the ability to send to whoever my system user has access to. I can't believe I did that. It's been a while that I've said that, but that's what happens when you've been teaching for 11 years. You'll sometimes go back to another time. So you'll notice that mine here says disconnect account. Normally this would have a big blue button that would say connect account. And when you're getting ready to connect your account, you want to make sure you're logged out of all instances except for in your CRM org, you want to be logged in as your system user, because what happens when you go to connect is it connects via OAuth. Then it'll pull in those credentials, or it'll ask you to log into your Salesforce org when you go to click on connect account. So those are all important things to note. So we've covered a lot of important concepts so far. So we've covered scope by user. Again, you can disconnect accounts if you want, or you feel like the need to. I also want to talk a little bit about users. So let's go take a look at your users. And in particular, I'm going to spend some time talking about the API user. So if I click on my API user, I've already got this API user integrated, but down here in our Salesforce.com status, you'll notice here that it says integrated. So if I'm going to click on modify settings. I don't need to modify them, but I'm just going to show you. But this just basically says what Salesforce user is your API user. You know, what is it? Which one are we integrating it with? So this is where we're saying the API user here needs to point to my tracking user over in the world of Salesforce. So this is the username that I have for my tracking user over in Salesforce CRM. And that is why that is saved there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on cancel. So for every user that you're using in Marketing Cloud here, if we're using the system as it was designed in order to have full functionality, we would want to align our users in Marketing Cloud with our users in Salesforce by going through this integration step. Another key thing to note, this is an important thing to know, is make sure that your API user is checked here with API user. So this is something that's important for the connection, but it also does some other handy things, like API users don't have to adhere to password policy. So if your password has to be reset every 30 days, let's say, and we didn't have this checked, then API users would lose access every 30 days. And again, these are recommended to be dedicated users that people aren't logging into on either side, the user we're using for this connection. So that is not ideal. So we'd want to definitely check this as API user. Another key thing to know about API user, and this is a common troubleshooting issue, is if you don't have your API user in the business unit that you're connecting, then not to get too technical, but things will not worky. That's one of my favorite words. So it will not work unless you have your API user that's going to exist in the business units that you're going to be connecting in. So you'd have to add this to all the proper business units that would be in play. So these are key things we would do over here on the Marketing Cloud side of things. And I feel sorry, or I feel bad. I'm going I feel like I'm going super fast because I'm covering information that I normally cover over a over a 4-hour time period, but I feel like I'm hitting the key kind of points that you would need to know. So after we've got our settings all correct over here in Marketing Cloud, we would want to jump back over into the world of Salesforce, and we would want to look at our connector settings. So when you install Marketing Cloud Connect, another thing that you probably are going to want to put in place is going to be a custom app. So you can have your tabs show up like Marketing Cloud and Email Sends and Send Analytics. And I'm going to click on my Marketing Cloud tab here. And as I go into my Marketing Cloud tab, I'm going to click to connect it. And this is usually a good sign. So when you see your screen looking like this when you're on your Marketing Cloud tab, you'll notice that it jumps us from the Marketing Cloud tab to the Email Sends tab. So that's just something that all happens magically behind the scenes. And it's already ready to send an email. So one of the things I want to make sure I cover today too are all the different ways we can send emails out from Salesforce CRM and also from Marketing Cloud. And of the ways that we can send from Salesforce, I'll go ahead and list those for you now. We can send to reports from here. We can also send to campaigns. We can send to individual leads or contacts, and we can also set up triggered sends. And when you hear triggered sends here, I'm going to make sure I cover what you need to set up a triggered send. There are 3 key things you need. But as we go in, we look here at our email sends. I'm going to go over here to click on Configure Marketing Cloud Connector. So again, this org's already been connected, but we would have to go through these steps in order to do this. And if I go to edit my settings, I'm going to hit some of the highlights here. We'd have to check that we want to use email as a part of this. When it comes to audiences, so do you want to be able to target reports and campaigns? Do you want to be able to exclude reports and campaigns? So why would I want to exclude a report or campaign? Let's say I sent to a campaign on Monday and on campaign A, and on Tuesday I want to send to campaign B. But my fear is some of the people in campaign B may be also in campaign A, and I don't want to over message. So what I could do is you can send to one thing. So you can send to campaign B, and then you can use campaign A as an exclusion audience. And then that is just kind of a way of filtering out, making sure you're not over messaging people. Okay, let's look at triggered sends. When it comes to triggered sends, and I want you to write this down if you would please. There are 3 things you need to make a triggered send work in the world of Marketing Cloud Connect. Number 1, you need to have created the trigger. So I'll show you that here in just a second, but it's in the documentation. You follow the documentation on how to set up your trigger. It's your Apex trigger. Number 2, we need to come here and determine which object we want to enable. And so I've enabled the case object over here. So in our settings, we'd have to make that happen. And then the third thing is, whatever this object is that we're enabling, it's got to have a lookup to the lead or the contact object in Salesforce. So you can use Marketing Cloud Connect with person accounts, but I'm going to speak to it on the or what we normally kind of see when we go to connect things, and that is when you're setting this up, your lead or contact ID has got to equal your subscriber key in Marketing Cloud in order for this to align. So that's how we tie the two users together, essentially, or the people. So our contact over in Salesforce and our subscriber key over in Marketing Cloud, that's how we tell who that person is in either system. So you got to have those 3 things. You got to create that trigger. You've got to enable it here in your connector settings. And then that object has to have a lookup to leader contact ID, because that's who we're sending emails to with Marketing Cloud Connect. The other thing you can do here is you can have tracking. Tracking frequency is how often we're pushing tracking data from Marketing Cloud into Salesforce. So Marketing Cloud is our database of record for tracking, which would make sense. And again, every hour we can push that information over, or you can choose to do it every day. So I think most of the people, that makes sense when they go to look at this. If you're ever not sure in connector settings, you can always kind of drag your mouse over these little question marks if you happen to have a connected org. And then the next thing we see here is a number of days tracked. And I think that this, at least initially, is difficult for people to understand just how it's named and labeled. So some things I think between Marketing Cloud Connect and is very intuitive. Some things aren't hard, but they're not intuitive, and this is one of them. So number of days tracked, really I think a lot of people hear this and they think, oh, that's determining how long we're going to store tracking data in Salesforce. So they think if they put in 7 days, it's only going to show 7 days of tracking. But what this number is really saying is, how long am I going to wait to look and see if somebody opened or clicked this email? That's really the big question it's answering. So if I send my email out on Monday, am I going to wait 30 days to see if somebody opened and clicked? Am I going to wait, 7 days, 30 days, 90 days? Am I going to wait a year? But this has a key important metric here. So when you're using Marketing Cloud Connect, it does store, it stores a fair amount of tracking data over in Salesforce CRM. And sometimes people want to get rid of their older tracking data. You can only remove tracking data that goes beyond whatever this number of days tracked number is. Otherwise, since you're saying I want to look for up to, if you say I want to look for up to 90 days, you can't delete data that's there for 30 days, because tomorrow it's going to look again. It's going to find it because that's within the 90-day window, right? So what our recommendation is, our best practice is to do it for 90 days. So 90 days is going to be a good window for most people to determine if they're going to open or click your email. I do know some clients will, that are comfortable with a smaller window. Some are happy with 30. Again, almost nobody would do 7. We do it like with 2 or 3 days in class, just simply so we can show you how to remove tracking data later. But that's what number of days tracked is for. I know what campaign member tracking is, but I'm not going to get into that concept. I'm going to choose to go somewhere else. Let's see. So this is setting up the connector. And again, I can send to reports or campaigns, and then you can access triggered sends here. So if I click on triggered sends, I did create a triggered send earlier today. It's this case close trigger. So I had to create the Apex trigger over in the world of our setup menu, but this basically is a trigger I set to send an email out whenever a case is closed. So you can set this up here in Salesforce. It's really the one automated thing you can set from Salesforce. All your other automations would be automations that you would set up in Automation Studio or Journey Builder. But I do want to pop over and look at a contact record. And if you go to look at a contact record, I'm going to click on our good friend here, Joey. But I want to point out a few things that you can do with Marketing Cloud Connect. And these are some of the things that get me pretty excited. So one of the things that we can do is we can come over here to where we see the Salesforce Marketing Cloud session. And there are 3 Visualforce, we drag some Visualforce links down here, but these Visualforce pages are going to control these 3 links that you see here. So one of them is send Marketing Cloud email. And this is such a powerful thing and it sounds so small. But have you ever tried to send to an individual person in Marketing Cloud? If you do, you're going to be sending an email to a list of one or a data extension of one or a report of one, right? So you have to create something of one. So what I love here is we click on Send Marketing Cloud Email. It will automatically take us into our connector, and it's ready to send to this individual user. Powerful. Cool stuff. I think of the use cases here for like salespeople wanting to follow up with somebody. You're already in CRM. You're tracking your information with that person. You want to send a follow-up email. This is a great, awesome way to do it. The other links on here that are really important that we want to look at are is the unsubscribe link. So in the world of Salesforce, if you want somebody to be unsubscribed, we control that with this field here called email opt-out. So if somebody opts out of email, then they're going to click that. And remember, I mentioned earlier, this is something that at least has to be visible to your users of Marketing Cloud Connect via field level security, because we have to be able to, if you're sending email, we have to see if they've opted out in either place. But the problem is if I went to this particular person and I clicked email opt-out, it only opts them out here from the Salesforce side of things. It doesn't change them to unsubscribed in Marketing Cloud. And that, my friends, is what we call bad data. So now we have an imbalance in the force of what's happening. But if you come over here, this handy dandy link here that says Marketing Cloud unsubscribe, if we click on that, it's going to unsubscribe us from both places, which is going to be amazing. By the way, Marketing Cloud Connect does not support list level unsubscribe. As a part of the out-of-the-box offering. So that's another thing to note. So if you're taking the Marketing Cloud Consultant certification, you have to be thinking of it in those terms. When somebody unsubscribes from one thing, they unsubscribe from them all. And again, we would want to use this particular hyperlink in order to, if we're doing a manual unsubscribe, and it'll unsubscribe them in both places. The other thing that's installed here is helpful too. If you go in to look at your View Marketing Cloud Analytics, it can automatically kind of pull this person up and you can kind of see what their email trends have been like with you in terms of opens and clicks and things. But we can get to that another way. These other two I think are monumentally important and very, very beneficial. Other things that we can do, so I'm going to talk a little bit about tracking since we're in this geographic space. But when you do send an email to somebody, from Salesforce or from Marketing Cloud, there are a couple of related lists that you can add down here to look at things. And there's going to be this email sends and there's individual email results. Email sends is only going to show you those sends where I went and I clicked on send Marketing Cloud email. So if I'm sending just an email to this particular person, I'm just sending an email to Joey. And a lot of times that throws people because that sounds like an individual send. But these are individual email results. This is one of the objects that'll get installed as a part of Marketing Cloud Connect. And what we're seeing under here in individual email results is going to be all the emails that have been sent to this particular contact. And you have to set up your page layout to see the things here you want to see, but I can see things like clicks, I can see things like opens, total clicks, total opens. And again, I want this to kind of race through. You're like, wow, this is really cool, because we're able to see all this information in Salesforce while I'm trying to track and get a hold of somebody. So if you're trying to call somebody, you can see, gosh, has this person been interested in the emails we've been sending? Oh, they're interested in this one. They've been clicking on that. That's really useful information to know if you're a salesperson getting ready to make a call. All right, so I'm going to jump back into Marketing Cloud. We're going to talk about a couple more things, and then we're going to leave Marketing Cloud Connect and make sure we cover some of these other topics. By the way, if you want to understand how to do the triggered send, how to get that all set up, it will tell you exactly how to build this trigger. So again, not a developer. I don't write Apex, but I was able to do this. It just shows you exactly how to create this trigger. And again, you just change it. Like here it says trigger trig lead on lead. For what I ended up putting in, it's trigger trig underscore object on object, or on case, trig underscore case on case, to put it all together. So super helpful documentation to put this stuff together. Okay, so over in our lovely land of Marketing Cloud, I am going to jump into Contact Builder. And where we get to the real beautiful game in Marketing Cloud Connect is when we're using synchronized data extensions. So if we come over to the land of Marketing Cloud Connect, and I go into the Data Sources tab, one of the things you're going to see here is Synchronized. And if you click on Synchronized and you've connected your Salesforce CRM org and Marketing Cloud successfully, you'll see this little box here where you can click on it. And now I have the ability to create a synchronized data extension. So you may be wondering, what is a synchronized data extension? Some of you may use them daily. It's one of the things I don't know is I don't know how much this group knows. So I'm always afraid I'm going to be telling you stuff that you already know, but I'd rather say it again than to miss it in case somebody here has never worked with Marketing Cloud Connect. But with synchronized data extension, what we can do is we can take an object in Salesforce, which is what we call our tables of data in Salesforce, and I can synchronize it over as a data extension, which is what we call our tables in the Marketing Cloud. And so a couple of big things to kind of know out of the gate. When you're synchronizing your objects over into Marketing Cloud, we're using synchronized data extension. Number one, only bring over the objects that you intend to use. Number two, of the objects you bring over, only bring over the fields you intend to use. If you bring over lots of objects you're never going to use in Marketing Cloud, or you bring over lots of fields you're never going to use in the Marketing Cloud, you're going to create lots of traffic for yourself to get through things. You're going to bog your data model down. It is a best practice to just bring over what you need. And that's going to be in terms of objects, and it's going to be in terms of fields. Now, when you go to set up an object, it is so easy to set up a synchronized data extension. You come to click on Setup Object, and you pick the one you want to bring over. Sometimes there are going to be prerequisites, and so as you come down, for example, you'll see this one saying this is available with sync prerequisites. You may have to bring over and synchronize another object or two first. But I've already synchronized over an object, and I want to point out another couple of things here. So if I click on my contact object here, it's showing me that I have 46 contacts that are already coming over here. And when you go to set up your sync, you get to just choose which fields you want to come over. And you know what's beautiful? Let's say that I am not bringing over a field that I want. You can come over here to edit fields and you can change it. You can say, well, gosh, I really wanted to bring over a fax number because I am constantly faxing in this day and age. And you can click on save and you can bring it in. So you can unclick things, you can click things. And so you can edit this model even after your initial setup. The other thing that you can do when you go to set up things is you can set up something called a poll schedule. And a poll schedule is going to be how often this information is being synchronized to your account. So I'm going to go back to this one's not letting me see that now since I'm in the middle of defining it. So let me see if I can click on this object. So whenever you go to set this up, your poll schedule determines how often we're updating the data from our Salesforce object into the data extension in Marketing Cloud. And for example, you'll see here we can do that every 15 minutes is the fastest. We can also do it every 30 minutes or every hour. Those are our choices. You can bring over only records with an email address. So for contacts and leads, that may make some sense. We can kind of kick out some records that are not usable over here. You can do it based on a date. You can also do it based on something like a checkbox field. So these are all key things to note. Make sure you know what a polling schedule is. Make sure you know that we can edit the fields that are coming in as we go through this process. And after you set up things in Marketing Cloud Connect, it will automatically create an attribute group for you. And as you're studying along the ways, I know some of you have said you received your admin certification. You know how important Data Designer is, because whenever we set up these attribute groups, that gives us visibility for our data models. This is how we're setting up our data model. This has huge impacts in things like decision splits in Journey Builder. So if I can go to click here, and again, it creates, most of the time we have to, custom attributes we have to create. This will automatically do the connecting for us. So this has created our contact object here. But yeah, and so this is great. So now that this has happened, now whenever I go into Journey Builder, if I'm trying to do a decision split, determining on maybe I want to send people down a path where their mailing state equals New York, I can now do that because this data is now accessible as part of my data model. Let's see. It also does create data extensions in your synchronized data extensions folder. So if you go to look here, I can see my contact data extension that's been produced from this synchronization process. But I do want to point out a couple of things. These are cool tidbits to know about synchronized data extensions. Number one, I cannot modify my data extension from Content Builder or Contact Builder, excuse me. So I'm in Contact Builder here. I cannot modify these records. All my buttons are grayed out. And the reason why is this data, the database of record here is CRM. So if I want to change John's email address, I need to change his email address over in Salesforce CRM. Then every 15 minutes, whatever my polling schedule is, it'll update the information here. But I always kind of like to let people know that we use the term synchronized, but in my mind, it just helps me to think of it like this. It's kind of like a stream. So our data gets updated over in Salesforce, and then it streams over here every 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you kind of have put together. There are only two ways you can modify Salesforce CRM data from Salesforce Marketing Cloud. One of those ways is going to be some type of a developer method. So you're going to have to be using some type of code to do that. The second way, and the easiest way, is through Journey Builder. So Journey Builder is the one place we can make modifications to our Salesforce data without having to write code to do so. So Journey Builder allows us to create new contacts. It allows us to update records, case records, for example, things like that. So it's another one of the most beautiful things about Marketing Cloud Connect and putting all these fun things together. So this is showing you synchronized data extensions. Let me just bop into Journey Builder really quickly and kind of try to show you a little bit about some of those settings as well. I probably should pause for a second. How are we doing? I know I said questions at the end, but is everybody catching what I'm throwing down? Am I going too fast? Should I look at chat?
No, we're good. Keep on rolling, and yeah, we will ask questions at the end. We've got like I think 7 or so right now.
Okay, perfect. All right. It's I'm used, and again, I'm the one who said I wanted to do questions at the end, but I'm used to getting feedback along the way. So again, hopefully you're catching what I'm throwing down. So so we come over here to, I'm going to look at Journey Builder here really quickly, and I just want to point out some other things that are cool. So another thing about synchronized data extensions is you can't send email to synchronized data extensions. However, you can send to filtered synchronized data extensions. So if I pull over my contacts, I'm doing a contact synchronized data extension in Marketing Cloud, even though I can't send to that. If I go say, find everybody on my contact synchronized data extension who lives in New York, I can send to now that filtered data extension of that. As a matter of fact, that's the exact data extension I'm using here for my journey and journey builder. But I want to point out a few things. First of all, when it comes to entry sources, one of your entry sources here can be Salesforce data. So I can be, listening for things that are happening in Salesforce as a reason to bring people over. I know I used case closed earlier, but it's a good use case. So let me give you kind of an evolution of sorts in 3 different ways you can send in Salesforce and kind of think about a business solution. So one of the things that I could do is every time a case closes, I could have a support representative go to that individual contact in Salesforce CRM, click that little send email link that comes from the Visualforce page, and I can send to them manually. That's a follow-up. How did we do? And you can say, well, gosh, that's a good walk strategy, but what if I want to, run here? So I want to decide I want to run. So you go and you create a trigger in Salesforce CRM that says every time a case closes, boom, we're automatically going to send that email as a follow-up. But you're going to say, well, that's great, but what if I want to fly? What if I want to do more than that? When the case closes, I want to send them into a journey. And whenever I send that email out, I'm going to have a thumbs up and thumbs down email. If they click on thumbs up, I want to send them down one path. If they click on thumbs down, I want to send them down another path. I want to change the case status over in Salesforce from positive or negative, depending on if they click thumbs up or thumbs down. And so that's where you can really get into these amazing kind of connections and synergy between using the 2 clouds together. So we can listen to Salesforce data as a reason to bring somebody into a journey. The other thing we can do is down here, you'll see the Salesforce Activities. I can create a task. I can create an opportunity. I can update a case, create a case. You can even create contacts and leads here too. So all kinds of cool things we can do. And if I come over here, I'm going to use the decision split. So let's say I send an email and I go to my decision split. And in this decision split, I want to take advantage of that data that I've got with my synchronized data extensions. So I want to go and I want to split off this for people who live. So this journey has people coming in that are from the state of New York. Maybe I want to find and send a separate email to people who live in Albany, New York. So you can come in here, you can create, when you go to define your data for your split here, you can either use contact data or journey data. So we're going to talk about this in just a second, but contact data is going to be data that's up to date. And so I could come down here, and when you look at these different groups here, all of these groups are basically, when you're in your data designer and you see all those circles, these are showing you all of your attribute groups. So it automatically creates one for Marketing Cloud Connect. So if I came down here to my contact object, now I could find, I want to find mailing city, and I'm looking for mailing city equal to Albany. I don't think anybody matches this data that I have, but it doesn't matter. And then I could come back and do a little summary here. I could say, this is my Albany users going down the path. And then I can come down here for my remainder audience and say, not from Albany. And I hope you're seeing how powerful this is. And again, I think sometimes it's hard to see in a short amount of time, but now I can take all of this awesome data that I'm storing in Salesforce, and now I can use it over in my state-of-the-art Marketing Cloud to send my different campaigns and information. So I've got the power of Journey Builder, which is so powerful for sending out emails and everything else that we do. Obviously, Journey Builder, there's so many things we can do here. But I also, I have the ability to keep using, Salesforce CRM, which is just this great place for storing all our information. I can listen for things happening in Sales and Service Cloud and bring people in. I can make updates and changes over there. So it's really just fantastic. It really, I love it. It's pretty incredible. So let me see. I didn't really look at my script very much, just to make sure I didn't miss anything. So before we leave here, I promised bad wrapping. Are you guys ready for some bad wrapping before we kind of talk about the other couple of things here? Can you
Oh,
guys
I was going to ask you a question about bad wrapping.
We're always ready, Brian.
All right, are you ready?
Yep.
All right, here it comes. Everything began when the clouds got connected. We planned out things would be with the options we selected. In Marketing Cloud, we learned about personalization, content blocks and templates, and email creation. Sent emails to reports, sent emails to campaigns. We used Journey Builder. Look at our big brains. We can listen to Sales or to Service Cloud, make changes to those objects, and make ourselves proud. We learned tracking and reporting, and because we are so wise, we took data extensions and we had them synchronized. Thanks for listening to this little recap. This has been the Marketing Cloud Connect Wrap.
Nice.
This has been the wonderful wrap from Brian.
That was awesome.
Oh, thanks.
All right. So we ready to
Thank
answer
you.
some questions, or I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with
No,
your,
that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So let's good stopping point for questions, right? All right. So first question is about API users and scope by user.
Yep.
Or install packages. All right. So if the Salesforce CRM admin asks what the recommended install is, what do you recommend for the standard install? Admin only, all users, or certain profiles? They're saying typically they do non-scope by user installs since they don't have a lot of distributed marketing, since they don't do a lot of distributed marketing. So what would you recommend?
So that's a great question. And really, when it comes to that, it really just depends. There's not a right or wrong answer. It's the right or wrong answer for that particular company. So I know that sounds simplistic to say, but if you're trying to, the thing we typically talk about in data is the principle of least privilege, where you only want people to have access to the information they should have access to. So I would ask the question, are these people that are sending emails out of Marketing Cloud, do they need to have access to everybody to send emails to reports and campaigns? And if the answer is yes, then and every single user is going to equal that, then I think that you're going to, if you want to install it for the scope by, if you're going to do non-scope by user, that's fine. If you have one person who does not need to have that kind of access, then I would say scope by user is the way to go.
Definitely makes sense. All right, synced data extensions and contact data. Let's talk about that for a minute. All right, they said they are puzzled that Journey Builder cannot use Salesforce DEs. I'm assuming they mean synchronized data extensions when the triggered entry source is their Salesforce data listed as an option. Could you please clarify on this aspect?
Did you understand the question? Because I'm
A
not
little
sure that
bit.
I do.
I think they said that they were puzzled why they couldn't use synchronized data extensions as a triggered entry source for a journey.
Oh, yeah. I gotcha. So you can't, but you can use a filtered version of it. So what a lot of times people will do for that architecture, and this is a best practice as well, is to pre-filter your data sources that are coming into Journey Builder. So a lot of times, like let's say that I want to send a birthday campaign out, and I'm using a synchronized data extension to find that. So I've got birth date on there. What I can do is I can create a filter in Marketing Cloud, and then I can create a filter activity. And what I'm looking for is going to be, the birth date equal to, let's say today, if I want to send it out on the day of the birthday, I want to say birthday equal anniversary of today. So if I've got that going, then I can control that by an automation in Automation Studio. And the nice thing about Journey Builder is it can listen to an automation in Automation Studio, and we can determine to have our journey check for people every time that automation runs. So Automation Studio now is not only doing our pre-filtering, it's also really determining how often we're looking for folks who are going to be a part of this journey. I will tell you this little trick though. When you create a filtered data extension with Automation Studio, by default, it places that data extension in your synchronized data extensions folder, which Journey Builder can't see. And maybe this is where the question comes from. But what you can do is you can move that data extension. So if you go into, sorry, contact builder, sorry, my mouse. If you go into contact builder, and I'm not going to have a filter date extension here to show you, but if you go into your
Well,
data
any data
extensions,
extension, really, right?
yeah. But if I only have synchronized data extensions, I can't move them
Oh
around.
yeah, never mind. You can't move
Yeah.
those.
But if you go into your synchronized data extension folder, and this is a filtered data extension, this is where you can change where it's going to be. You can actually change the location. I can't change this one because it's actually a synchronized data extension. But what you'd want to do is after you create your automation studio to filter whatever the data extension you want to use for Journey Builder, then you basically just come here, you change the location to your data extensions folder, and as the automation runs, everything will run yippee skippy, and you can use that as a part of your journey. Did that answer your question? Maybe was that where you were going?
I think they did. I think you did. You know, a lot of people still know Journey Builder as a front, as a whiteboard for triggered sends. So I think that's exactly what I meant.
Perfect.
Speaking of triggered sends, they said someone asked if you could repeat the third point on your triggered send list of
So
things or requirements.
yeah, you have to create the trigger, the Apex trigger, which is in that little documentation. Number 2, you have to go to your Marketing Cloud configuration settings, which we were in, where you have to enable the object. And number 3, that object has to look up to the lead or contact object, because we're sending to leads or to contacts from Salesforce. And so, and again, your lead or contact ID in Salesforce, and we're talking about the 18-digit ID, is what needs to equal your subscriber key in Marketing Cloud. And like if you send to a report or campaign, you send to a person from Salesforce, we will automatically bring in that 18-digit version as a part of that.
And speaking about doing triggers from the Marketing Cloud versus Salesforce, we had someone ask what would be the use case, and is this going to be on the test? Is Apex?
I don't know for sure if it will be on there. One of the things I always got to tell people is that I took this certification a little while ago. Yeah, I took it a little while ago, and the other thing is they intentionally. So I'm a proctor too, so I do proctoring for exams, and so I can't answer like potential exam questions. It doesn't mean I can't tell you what's stuff that I kind of know that is on it. So I just try to cover the basics of the connector in hopes that it will help you then answer some of those questions. So I can't tell you for sure if it is, but what's interesting is when you create a trigger in Salesforce CRM, it will create a triggered send definition in Marketing Cloud. But the real difference here is whether we're using Apex for a trigger or not and listing this stuff in Salesforce. Typically, when you create a triggered send in Marketing Cloud, you're doing an API call looking for something. But I mean, it's a lot. If it's based on a change in a Salesforce object, it's a heck of a lot easier to just use either a journey entry event to bring something in whenever that object changes, or if it's just a one-off send, you can do the triggered send.
And I think the journey entry event will be on the consultant's exam. There's a good section on Journey Builder that's on the consultant's exam. But I am like yourself. I took that exam quite some time ago, so I can't answer what's on the new version.
Yeah, and they intentionally don't give us access to like the bank of questions, so we don't pervert the exam or whatever you want to say.
Exactly. That's a good term. I like that. I'm going to use that. I always say corrupt, but I like pervert.
Corrupt is probably a better word.
I don't know. I like your terminology there. Okay. So speaking of lead and objects, excuse me, I put object and lead, a contact and lead objects, triggering sends. By lookup to a lead or contact ID, does that mean that the object used for the triggered send must be directly related to the contact or the lead object? As in, it can't be more than one object away in terms of indirect relationships. That's a good question.
I would have to research that to give you a good answer, unless you happen to know that off the top of your head. I know it has to look up to the lead or contact object. I don't know how many off the top of my head. I don't know how I've not been asked that one before.
Yeah, I know if you're triggering from the Marketing Cloud, though, you can build that relationship out via a query in Automation Studio before
Yeah.
you do the trigger
Right.
or journey entry event.
Yeah, I'd have to check on that one.
Yeah. You'd have to build the relationship. Okay. Do you recommend? Oh, I already asked that question. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Ping a note here. Research needed.
Are people learning something new? Hopefully.
I think so.
Good.
I believe so. We got great questions here. Okay, so this is a great question, and it comes up all the time. Can you hide the email opt-out field so that users can only use the Marketing Cloud unsubscribe link instead? Or what is the best way to train users to use the Marketing Cloud Unsub link to keep both systems in sync?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It has to be visible from field level security. It does not have to be on the page layout.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. The other thing that I can tell you is, so this is what I would do because I think it's good to see it. Like I don't like removing it completely because seeing that person's opted out, I think has some benefit, but you also don't want somebody to use that. So what I think I would do is I would put it on the page layout, and then I would make that particular field not editable via the page layout.
That makes sense.
And then that way you can see it and they can't change it there.
That makes total sense. And they were wondering if you had a link to some documentation around that as well. And
it talks about the email opt-out field in that long list of documentation. And I think all it's going to say there, though, because the only thing that's required is that it's visible.
Yeah.
But in our class we teach, we actually have it removed from the page layout, and it works fine.
Makes sense. All right. Yeah, and I've seen it hidden on the page layout too. I remember. We have someone that just typed in a question about triggered send, so I'm going to, since we were talking about that just a second ago,
sure.
When they are sending email through triggered sends, there are some scenarios based on some fields in the triggered send DE. Should we not send an email? Is this possible? I think you're asking if you can filter people out of the triggered send DE when it's sent in. If you could, yes, okay. They're asking how to filter out people from the triggered send DE. So if you're writing to a triggered send definition with an API, with your API call, just don't make that call and it won't trigger the email. I think that's what you're asking, but let me know if that's incorrect. We don't want to make any changes on the CRM side. Okay, so are you triggering the email from Salesforce CRM? From Dynamics? That is the Microsoft Dynamics. So yeah, that would be. So I'm going to get up with you later on the SF chat Slack group, and we can chat about that. Okay, because that's more of a developer question, and I don't want to take away from the consultant certification questions that we've got coming in here. Okay, so have you ever heard of the synced objects from Marketing Cloud to Salesforce being deleted when the Marketing Cloud Connect is implemented? That's an interesting question.
I have not personally heard of that. I can't say that it's happened or not happened.
But yeah, that's a very interesting. I would definitely contact support.
That sounds like a support issue to me.
Yeah.
When we put them together, and they normally stay there. So.
Yep. The connector works pretty well. All right. Here's another synced objects question. Is it a best practice to create a custom Boolean field and to filter the sync to create a true false value based on several factors like email address, not opted out, certain record type, etc.?
Yeah, there's lots of different use cases where you can have a data model where you want to use one of those fields. One of the things that we use an example of is like a university. So maybe you are connecting and again, I haven't really talked about multi-org. That's kind of coming up next, at least briefly. But let's say you've got two different Salesforce orgs that are connected to one marketing cloud marketing cloud account. And so one's connected to one business unit, one's connected to another. And let's say that since you're using the same Salesforce org, let's say that in one of your business units, when you configure your data extensions, you only want to see grad students. And in another business unit, when you get to your synchronized data extensions for contacts, you only want to see undergrad students. Those Boolean fields can be really helpful for stuff like that. So if you have, if you want to kind of change your data model at a business unit level.
Great question.
Yeah, good one.
Here's another one for syncing. Is there a way to sync our sales service reports or campaigns to the marketing cloud? They asked because it seems that the import activity tool is no longer available in Email Studio interactions. Oh, yeah. The import activity is now available in Automation Studio and no longer available in Email Studio. That is correct. Right. I think that's what they're asking.
Yeah, I that's one of, and again, I know what that is, but it's one of those things that I don't use on the daily. So
yeah, so research that one.
I'd have to research that one. Yeah, I know what they're talking about, but
yeah, and I haven't seen that used.
It's just something I haven't done in a little
time.
while.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, though.
See, last time I think I saw that was 2015.
Yeah, I'm more into the synchronized data extensions, so it's normally what I see.
Oh yeah, the connector is glorious. Yeah, it's a great tool.
So it's a great question. Sorry, I didn't know the answer to that one off the top of my head. I'd have to research that one.
Okay, so and it's probably not on the question on the test if Brian doesn't know it. All right, so question around individual email results, the Iers. All right, they said the goal is email sends from the marketing cloud should have with Iers generated in Sales Cloud. They're saying they want, we have been sending the emails to a population saved in a data extension, but from this business unit that is supposed to have send tracking information pushed back to the Sales Cloud, which currently is not happening. And the Iers are not generated back in Sales Cloud. So they're asking, so what key things, prerequisites they need to keep in mind to get the Iers to be generated back into Sales Cloud?
Yeah, I'd have to, there's just a
That's
host
another
of things.
Research.
Yeah, and I think, and I apologize. Some of these things, I feel like I've had a little bit of time looking in your account. I could do it, but when I'm going through my head, there's a lot of different places that I would go and check. Yeah.
So you guys are asking some great questions. In other words,
they are, and the thing is
excellent questions.
Yeah, when it comes to wiring and some of those like specific implementation things, it's really hard to just, without knowing and answering, asking more questions and kind of seeing it. It's hard to just recall it. But I think what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, is just so I can kind of get through the rest of the stuff here, because I know
we're done with the questions as of now.
Oh, good, good. So thank you for the questions, and thank you for tracking those two. I'm going to try to kind of quickly go through a lot of this other stuff. I know that some of you can stick around and others of you can kind of listen to the recording, but I would tell you this: you do need to know what multi-org is. So that is something that you could be asked for on the certification exam. So it's one marketing cloud account and one or more Salesforce orgs. And so you can have a single marketing cloud user that can access multiple marketing cloud business units, and the business units are going to determine the ability to access the multiple orgs. There's a lot of great information that you can find in that tracking information I gave you. And I'm also going to give you a link to a really good Trailhead live segment if you want to come in and find out more about this. But you do need to know what multi-org is. That is definitely something that you could see questions about on the certification exam. And these are other things. We talked about unsubscribes. Make sure you know that unsubscribes, we don't support list level unsubscribe with Marketing Cloud Connect out of the box. Synchronized data extensions, we've talked about those. Make sure you know which extension product to address with certain use cases. And I'm going to have some information about some of those extension products. You want to be comfortable. We went through email sends. We went through Journey Builder. We went through tracking. Make sure you know the tracking you can see in both sides. So you can run reports over in the thing that's so beautiful about Marketing Cloud Connect is how much you can better track individual users in a CRM than you can from Marketing Cloud. You got to know what subscriber key is, which hopefully is Marketing Cloud folks that you certainly know that. So subscriber key / contact key, it's got to equal your leader contact ID in Salesforce. And again, make sure you're familiar with troubleshooting. And the good news is you will get some of those troubleshooting scenarios in that's around. So personalized messaging. So make sure you are familiar with the difference between a personalization string and AMP script. So when you see the term personalization string, it's basically just a copy paste. So if you have first name, so let's say you do %% first name, like you see here, %%. If my name is stored as Brian in all capital letters, that's what you're going to get. It's going to place Brian in all capital letters. Anything you do after that, beyond a copy paste, you've left the personalization string station and you have now entered the AMP script station. So you can do some simple AMP script cleaning functions like proper case, where that first letter gets capitalized, everything else is lowercase, as an example. But again, just making sure, a lot of people think personalizations and AMP script are the same thing, and there's even though they look the same, they're different. Dynamic content, serving up different content based on values. Data designer is where we looked at to set up our attribute groups. So that's key because it sets up our data model that we can have access to in Journey Builder. Know the difference between journey data and contact data. I'm going to talk about that really super quick here in a quick, I'm going to use a Jamboard for that. And then tracking. We showed you how you could see tracking on the Salesforce CRM side. And again, I'm assuming it's easier for you to find information about tracking with Marketing Cloud Connect because it's the same as it would be for Marketing Cloud. But let's do a quick jam on the difference between contact data and journey data. I don't know if you guys have used Jamboard before. So the three categories I have up here is what's for journey data and what is for contact data. And actually we'll look at chat here for a second and see what people think. So what's used by goals? Journey data or contact data or both? What are our choices here? So used by goals is going to be contact data. So the difference between journey data and contact data, I should have told you guys this earlier, I'm sorry. So journey data is going to be data that is created whenever somebody comes into a journey. Let me use a quick example to explain this and I'll come back to my whiteboard. So here's my example. So let's say, and I want you to pay attention to the center of the screen here. So I want you to pay attention to this part right here. So if I have an entry data extension, and I want, whenever the entry, so this is the information on the data extension as the person enters the journey, and I have a picture here of a copy machine. So it like copies this information and it places it here in this journey entry data. And the big thing, the reason I have this kind of represented by a copy machine is once you copy something, like you copy a piece of paper, you can't change it. So it's static, it stays that way for the same. So in this case, this is the person's subscriber key, Ron, and we're going to go with the last name here of our test. And we're going to say that's how this person's going to enter this particular journey. And then what's going to happen is after entering the journey, he's going to change his name. So he's going to change his name and he's going to go on a spinning spree and become an NTO customer. But the biggest thing I want you to notice here is our entry data doesn't change. Though our entry data our data extension that we use has changed. So let's kind of take a quick look about what is going to be used by the different parts of the Marketing Cloud to make this happen. So if we look at dynamic content and personalization strings. Dynamic content and personalization strings always are going to use journey data. So whatever the data was when this person came into the journey, if I had % first name, even though this person has changed their first name and last name and they've become an NTO Platinum user, it's going to pull in the data that was here. So personalization strings, dynamic content are always going to use journey data. This is just the behavior of how the table works. So let's go ahead and find out, well, what if we didn't want to do that? What if we wanted to make sure that when we're sending out our emails that everything is completely up to date? That's where instead of using a personalization string, you'd want to use a lookup function. So you can use an AMP script lookup function. And if you do that, then it's going to place the current values for the individual's name. So here we're going to see that we're going to be using the current values of the name instead of the information is when that person was injected in the journey. Same thing when it comes to, instead of doing dynamic content, if we're writing AMP script, we can change how the content is going to show. Then let's look at goals. Where do goals get their data from? So goals are going to be, you're going to want them to be current, right? So goals are always going to look at contact data. So a goal would never, ever look at entry data because otherwise you'd never change your goals. So when somebody entered the journey, they never change. So your goal is going to be based on a table that never changes. It doesn't make any sense. So goals are always going to be based on information that's in a data extension that's in your contact data builder model. So one of the reasons I have this circle here is to represent if your data doesn't exist, if your data extension doesn't exist in an attribute group, that's kind of like Journey Builder saying I can't see it. So we got to have our data in an attribute group for us to be able to see it. And then the last thing we have here is decision splits. So decision splits in Journey Builder are the one place where it can be either or. When you go to make a decision split, it will ask you, and we actually saw this earlier, do you want to use journey data or do you want to use contact data? The benefit of contact data is it's going to be up to date, it's going to be the most up-to-date data that's available. The benefit of using journey data is it's going to be faster. So depending on where in your journey you're at and how likely that data has changed after the person's been injected, those can help you kind of inform your decisions on which place that you want to go to. So now with a little bit of a description of what this is, let's go back here and kind of think about things. So goals, again, are always going to use contact data. What is static? Is contact data or journey data static? I'm going to go back to look at the chat. So our journey data is static, that's correct. What is used for decision splits? Journey data, contact data, or both? Both is correct, I'm seeing that come in. How about dynamic content? Where's dynamic content? What does it use? And dynamic content uses journey data. So dynamic content is using journey data. What do personalization strings use? Yep, seeing the right answer. It's going to be journey data and dynamic content. So actually, I didn't read my own question here. So contact data is dynamic. So those of you who said dynamic, you're right. Dynamic content is used by journey data. So anyway, hopefully this is helpful, kind of talking about what uses both, but you definitely need to know the difference between them. Journey data is going to use dynamic content, or dynamic content and personalization strings are always going to use it, and it's static. Goals are going to use contact data. It is dynamic. And then both is where decision splits come into play. All right, so hopefully that was a fun little game going over the basics of that. And I know you may be debating how fun it was. Let's see what else we got here. All right, so Marketing Cloud extension products. We talked about this a little bit, so you'll need to know about those. I feel like we talked about this information earlier. Yeah, I actually have that in here twice. Oops. So resources. So I'm going to give this over, but there is a trail for Marketing Cloud Connect. I would encourage taking that if you haven't and you're curious how it goes together. Strategies for connecting Marketing Cloud and Salesforce. There's a couple of really good Trailhead live webinars, and I want to. I hope that nobody has to leave right away. One of the cool things I hope I get to show you is Trailhead Live. There have been some really more in-depth conversations, so there's more of that kind of developer type variety that's out there. But I think a lot of times people aren't exactly sure how to find it. So I'm going to spend a minute showing you. And one of the reasons is I noticed recently that not all of our Marketing Cloud sessions were tagged appropriately. And so I spent some time going through and working with our team to get those things tagged. So I do want to show you that before we go. A lot of this other stuff here, quite frankly, are going to be trails. But again, if you need to learn extension products, I think that that's a good place to start. But let me jump over to Trailhead or Trailhead Live really quick. So if you do a Google search for Trailhead Live, and we go ahead and again, we click on Trailhead Live. There's all these different places that you can go. So for example, you'll see featured up here and view all. But what I want you to do is I want you to go down to the section that says newest videos, and I want you to go to view all. And so I'm going to show you how to find videos that are new, but some that aren't necessarily new. But when you go here to newest videos, then you can go to product and you can now look for Marketing Cloud. And if you go to look for Marketing Cloud, there is a ton of stuff here. And some of this stuff is for architects. Some of this is developer stuff. There's some API stuff that I've seen on here. So Marketing Cloud Preference Center for architects. So Marketing Cloud API is a RESTful introduction. So again, a lot of this goes beyond Marketing Cloud Consultant, but I'm just kind of showing you, for those of you I know that are here that are developers, there is more probably here than I think a lot of people may know, but there are a couple of these sessions that I've labeled in the resources that have to deal with things like multi-org. So you can come and you can see people talking about multi-org depending on how much you want to learn about it. But I highlighted those things in particular, but I wanted to let you know that this resource is here for you. Let's see. And anyway, I'm delighted that you had me come speak. I don't know if anybody has any other kind of questions that remain. I know that we're pushing up against time.
We didn't get any from the crowd, but a lot of interactivity with your fun whiteboard session there. So that was awesome.
Fun.
Does anybody have any last questions for Brian before we head out? Okay, okay, I'll ask Brian, but why don't they have tracking results for SMS like they do with the email sends in Salesforce?
Got you. So I would just
this will not be on the test, by the way.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, that's something to put in the ID exchange, I think.
Yeah, you might want to talk to your account executive. And, yeah, like I said earlier. All right. Yeah, and if you guys have any more questions, JB just threw up the form to ask questions for the Q&A session, which will be another hour-long session at the end. And JB, I'll let you speak to that.
Yes, that's going to be on 11th of March. So please, if you have any questions related to the certification or any of the topics that we have been discussing during these sessions, please fill this form out and we'll have the experts in the panel address those questions. And I'm also sending a link to the playlist in the chat window where this video recording will be added. And I think that is all from my end. The next session is going to be on 4th that's Thursday, same time, 9 p.m. EST. That's
Brian, if you could show up and rap for us, we'd appreciate it.
Thanks so much, everybody. It's been great. I really appreciated getting the opportunity to speak to everybody tonight. So hopefully everybody learned at least something new. So
it was wonderful having you, Brian. We learned a lot. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining today. You have a good good rest of your day. Good night. And hope to see you in our next session. Take care.
Thank you.
Night.